They finally done it. The Cleveland Browns have won their first game since I started my channel. Happy Victory Monday, Browns fans. I miss that feeling. Unfortunately, this is coffee, not beer, because it's 3 o'clock on a Monday and I don't want to get my channel restricted. But I'm celebrating nonetheless. Hey guys, Oliver here, aka UK Browns NFL, and this is my review of the Cleveland Browns Week 8 win over the Baltimore Ravens, 29-24. First and foremost, that win was for you, Jim. As most of you know, Jim Donovan, the voice of the Cleveland Browns, passed away over the weekend at the age of 68 after a long battle with leukemia. Jim was the voice of more than a generation of Browns fans and inspired so many people with his enthusiastic approach to broadcasting. I personally will never forget hearing Jim's voice practically teach me, everything I needed to know about the Browns and the NFL when I used to stream my first Browns games all those years back. You will be missed, Jim. You helped make this random British dude the fan that I am today. My thoughts are with your wife Cheryl, your daughter Megan, and the rest of your family. You left an everlasting legacy in Cleveland that will be remembered for generations to come. You may be gone, but you will never be forgotten. We love you, Jim, always, and that one was for you. Moving on to the game itself, what a win. What a win, guys. Finally back in the win column after a 5-game losing streak. As I said, I missed this feeling. The Browns played their first complimentary game of football this season, and the results definitely showed. The offense showed signs of life for the first time this year. And I think the defense did a great job slowing down one of the NFL's top offenses. Special teams played well as well. Hopkins made his kicks and Corey still punts a beautiful ball. Just a great win overall against a really, really good Ravens team. So quick game recap. Thankfully, this game did not start with the Browns giving up a 100-yard kick return like it did last week. The Ravens did have a pretty good opening drive, but the Browns defense got a massive 4th down stop in the red zone. On that opening drive to maintain their perfect record of not giving up a opening drive score this season, not even a field goal. So they really set the tone in the first half defensively with that stop. I did think it was a questionable play call from the Ravens, lining up Henry in the Wildcat, because you're kind of limiting your options. As the defense knows just to focus on Henry in that situation, whereas when you've got Lamar and Henry and even sometimes another running back there, you've got multiple things that you need to worry about. So it was a slightly questionable call, but obviously as a Browns fan, I wasn't complaining. Great to get that stop. And there was points during that opening drive that I was genuinely terrified of the Ravens offense. At some points early in this game as well, they just looked unstoppable. But as I said, the Browns did a great job, especially on that opening drive. The Browns offense then had a great 6+ minute drive, took the ball down the field, but did end up settling for a field goal on that drive. That pretty much took all the time out of the first quarter. In the second quarter, the Browns defense gave up a field goal after a big Derrick Henry run, but played pretty much well other than that. The Browns offense looked much improved, but was still able to capitalise with touchdowns, so had to settle for another field goal, took the score to 6-3. Defense then gets a stop, and the Browns had the ball with under 2 minutes left in the first half and a chance to double dip, but end up in a 3rd and 15. And instead of just running the ball and punting, pretty much giving the Ravens not much time to do anything, Dorsey decided to call a pass play. Winston got strip sacked, and the Ravens recovered. They then scored the ensuing touchdown on an 11-yard touchdown pass to Aguilar. So, a situation where you should have been going into the half with a lead and getting the ball back, you're instead going into the half down 4. It was a terrible call. I think some people's muscle memory had them on Twitter ready to shout at Kevin, but then obviously remembered that Dorsey is now calling the plays. Obviously the first bad call that he's made of his tenure so far. But I think other than that disaster to end the half, the Browns offense did look much improved with Winston in there. And the Browns defense, they pretty much made Baltimore's high-powered offense look pretty pedestrian. They would have only allowed 3 points in this first half if it wasn't for that turnover at the end. So moving on to the second half, the Browns scored on their opening drive coming out of the half after another really positive drive from Winston, which resulted in an incredible 23-yard touchdown grab from an Njoku over Eddie Jackson. There was 3 12-plus yard completions to Judy and Moore on that drive. Encouraging stuff, much better from what we've seen so far this year. Browns defense then got another big stop after Newsom put the Ravens on a 50-yard line with a PI call. Mahmoud Diabate absolutely stuffed Derrick Henry on 2nd and 4 to set up third and medium, which was just a fantastic play from the young man, and really contributed to getting the Ravens off the field there. However, on the next drive, the Ravens were able to go and score with a touchdown to Mark Andrews. Of course, both teams' tight ends got a touchdown on National Tight End Day. I think there was quite a lot of tight ends, as there always is, that got a touchdown yesterday. But something the Browns offense hasn't really done at all this year. They responded. They had another great drive, capped off by a touchdown to Cedric Tillman. Jameis Winston became the first Browns quarterback to have 200-yard passing on that drive, and it was only the third quarter. So it just goes to show what we've seen out of that quarterback position so far this year. Then unfortunately, JOK suffered a really scary looking injury after tackling Derrick Henry. You could see his head obviously got hit by Derrick Henry's arm, and as he kind of fell to the floor on his shoulder, I think his neck twisted back as well. As I said, really, really scary stuff. He was carted off and taken to the hospital immediately. It was ruled as a neck injury, but it was reported shortly afterwards that he did have movement in all his extremities, which was obviously great news. He was kept in hospital overnight for observation, so really hoping this wasn't as serious as it looked, and they were just taking as much precaution as they could possible. But it kind of obviously sucked a little bit of air out of the stadium at that moment. But it was awesome to see the fans kind of rally behind JOK and chant his name as he was carted off, and you kind of hope that maybe the team could be inspired by that and go and take that into the fourth quarter, which I think they did. So in the fourth quarter, Justin Tucker missed another 50-yard field goal to continue his bad streak from 50-plus yards over the last 2 years. But the Browns were unable to capitalise and they were forced to punt. But the Browns then got a huge break after Bateman dropped a great pass from Lamar on 3rd and 14. The Browns defence did really well to get the Ravens in 3rd and 14, 3rd and long. But then after scrambling around for about 5 seconds, as Lamar seems to always do, he then threw a pretty good pass to Rashad Bateman, who got pretty open near the halfway point. So thank you, Rashad Bateman, for dropping that ball, because the outcome of this game could have been different. I know obviously the Ravens did end up scoring after this, but this could have changed the game. So that was a big moment. The Browns then took the ball down the field and got another field goal to extend their lead to 6. So this was 23-17 at this point in the fourth quarter. But Lamar basically took the Ravens 90 yards in like 2 minutes to respond, and Derrick Henry scored a 1-yard touchdown to tie the game at 23-23. And then Tucker steps up for the extra point. You're thinking, oh, maybe because he's missed his previous field goal, he might not make this one. He made it and put the Ravens up 1. So at this point, you're thinking, just a great Browns performance, that they might not just be able to come out with the win. But the Browns did have 2 minutes and 36 seconds and 3 timeouts with a chance to go and win the game. Obviously, only down 1, you only need a field goal at that point, so you haven't got to drive the full length of the field. The drive started really well with 2 great receptions for first downs from Cedric Tillman and Jerry Jeudy. The Browns were then facing a 55-plus yard field goal on 3rd and 7, so a massive third down, and Jameis made a great throw to Elijah Moore, who made an awesome catch for the first down. But then in typical Browns fashion, the Browns got a false start penalty on the very next play to back them up 5 yards. So it was 1st and 15 at this point. And then the Browns scored another massive break. As I said, obviously with Rashad Bateman dropping his pass, Kyle Hamilton dropped a pretty much guaranteed interception. He literally had the ball in his hands. I was ready to start swearing at the TV, but thankfully he bobbled it and dropped it. And by the way, I think there was like 5 or 6 dropped interceptions in this game between both teams, which was pretty crazy to see. Ball was either quite slippery or both teams weren't practicing their catching in their defensive drills this week. But in the end of the day, you know what they say. That's why they played corner, not wide receiver. So there was quite a lot of dropped interceptions in this one. So yeah, heart in mouth moment. All pro Cole Hamilton mind. I think most days would catch that. Thankfully for us, he drops it, and then on the very next play, Jameis Winston throws a 38-yard touchdown to Cedric Tillman. Just absolutely massive. You went from a situation where the game would have been over with that interception to a 5-point lead. They were unsuccessful on the 2-point attempt, so it did remain a 5-point lead. But as I said, it was massive in that moment. And, not many QBs probably have a shorter memory than Winston to throw that, that ball the very next play after nearly getting picked. And credit to Dorsey for, understanding that and staying aggressive. So yeah, great to see. That obviously took Jameis to over 300 yards passing. As I mentioned earlier, he became the first Browns quarterback this year with over 200 yards passing in a game in the third quarter, and then in the fourth quarter surpasses 300 yards passing as well. So the Ravens have about a minute left. I think they had one timeout left to go pretty much the full length of the field. They did manage to get to around the 28-yard line with about 20 seconds left. So another heart-in-mouth moment. But the Browns defense hold on and the Browns got the win. If you haven't seen the call from Nathan and Andrew on that final play, I encourage you to go and see it. Very emotional with the passing of Jim over the weekend. Seeing both of them and how happy they were for the Browns to get this win for Jim was a really special and emotional moment for any Browns fans. So I do encourage you to go and watch that. It's on most of the Browns socials where you can find it. Just an awesome video. So moving on from the recap, as I mentioned earlier, the Browns offense looked alive and kicking this week. 401 total yards, 6.1 yards per play. They had 22 first downs in this game, and they were 8 for 15 on third down, which is massive when you think about how bad, historically bad they've been with third down so far this year. I think they might have had more 10-plus yard passing plays in the first half than they had in the previous 7 games. So just really positive stuff to see. I said in my keys to victory in my preview that the Browns would have to establish the passing game against the Ravens in this game. With 2 of their top 3 corners being out in a already shaky pass defense, and the additions of Winston and Dorsey this week to the offense, I think it was pretty obvious that the Browns were going to heavily favour the passing attack against the Ravens. So I expected to see it. We did see it, and it performed well. I tweeted before the game that I'd be shocked if Jameis didn't have 40-plus passing attempts, and he finished the game 27 for 41 for 334 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. As I touched on earlier, in this game, Jameis Winston became the first Browns quarterback this year to have a game with over 200 yards passing, 300 yards passing, 3 passing touchdowns, and over 20 points scored in the game. The difference was night and day. You can point to dropped interceptions, which are more than valid criticisms, don't get me wrong. But other than that, I do think that Winston played really well. He stood up in the pocket. He delivered the ball on time. I thought he did a great job picking up the Ravens' blitzes, something that we haven't seen from a Browns quarterback at all this year. I think Dorsey as well had a good day as well. Other than that bad call at the end of the first half, I thought he complimented Winston well and called a good game. I think that final touchdown only happens because you've got a quarterback and a play caller who are on the same page when it comes to being aggressive and pushing the ball down the field. It was good to see a balance of Stefanski's kind of under center play action scheme mixed in with some more aggressive downfield concepts with Dorsey's play calling. And yes, I do understand that, the Browns were going up against the Ravens pass defense that was ranked near the bottom of the league and obviously was missing 2 of their top 3 corners. Completely understand. And, of course, we do need to see what Winston can do against better pass defenses, especially. But even with that said, I do think it was still clear how much better this offense looked with Winston at quarterback compared to the previous quarterback. Watson played games against some depleted secondaries as well. You look at the Jaguars game this year, they were out most of their guys, and he was unable to repeat this level of production. So I just think at the end of the day, I've said that a change at QB would allow us to evaluate this offense properly, and I think that rang true this weekend. We got to see a lot more out of this offense. I think the Browns wide receivers were really good in this game. Tillman, Judy, and Moore all going for 75 plus yards. Cedric Tillman in particular had an amazing game, career day for him, 99 yards, 2 touchdowns. On the final drive especially, he did a really great job holding onto the ball while getting smashed by 2 guys to get one of the first downs. And then, of course, had the game-winning touchdown as well. So a great game out of Tillman, really encouraging stuff. I do also think that Elijah Moore is having a sneaky, decent year. And I think he does get a lot of criticism, but I think personally I would consider re-signing him, depending on the number. I can't imagine that he's going to get offered much elsewhere. So if you can bring him in on a kind of prove-it deal or an affordable deal, it's something that I probably would be happy with. I don't think it's a coincidence that after the quarterback change, the Browns wide receivers looked, much improved. You can frame it how you want, but at the end of the day, Winston gave his receivers a chance to make plays, something that the previous quarterback just wasn't able to do. And, Winston is going to throw interceptions, but he will at least give these guys a chance to make plays. So I'm excited to see what these young receivers can do for the rest of the year. I think, Andrew Berry has gotten a lot of slack for his draft picks, especially at wide receiver. But in this game, I think we saw the potential of some of those players. And, I do think it's always important to give guys time to develop before we kind of make a declaration on them, whether they're good or not. I think the offensive line probably had its best performance of the year. They looked much better. DeJuan Jones was pretty decent at left tackle. He had a few mistakes, couple of false start penalties, but other than that, I think he played, pretty well considering it was his first NFL start at left tackle. And he also only started at left tackle once for Ohio State as well. So encouraging stuff. Granted, the Ravens pass rush isn't exactly very good, but it's still positive signs at a position that the Browns do need to figure out what they're going to do with long term. So encouraging stuff out of DeJuan Jones. I think some of the improvements in the O-line play overall is of course probably down to them being relatively healthy. But I do also think that having Winston at quarterback did help as well. Winston was only sacked twice this game, which is a massive difference from the 5 sacks a game that they were averaging going into this game. And, whilst most people recognise that this offensive line was bad, it was amplified by Watson, holding on to the ball for too long and in a lot of situations running into pressure and creating it himself. With Winston, similar to Flacco last year, you can kind of negate a bad O-line a bit better because the QB is going to be where he's supposed to be within the pocket. He's going to get the ball out, within the timing of the offense. So whilst I think that, of course, the O-line is obviously going to be better the healthier they get, they were helped by the quarterback change. I also think Nick Chubb is still Nick Chubb, man. He still turns plays that should be 1-yard losses into 4-yard gains. So I'm really, really looking forward to seeing, him throughout the rest of the season as he goes further and moves further away from, the recovery of this injury. And, he moved into 3rd all-time in Brown's career rushing yards in this game. I'll be shocked if they don't find a way of bringing him back. And with the performances we've seen, I do still think there's a lot for Nick Chubb to offer in this team. So another encouraging game out of him on his 2nd game back. As I said earlier, the Browns defense had a really good game. I thought Denzel Ward was fantastic before his concussion. Should have had a pick, but continued to prove why he is one of the best corners in the league. The concussion is obviously worrying. That is 6 in 4 years now. And, I'm sure we will see a lot of discourse this week about whether he should retire and all of this stuff. And whilst I do understand that it's coming from a place of concern, for Denzel's well-being, at the end of the day, only Denzel and his doctor know the true extent of the severity of these concussions. So I think it's best to just, instead of speculating and stuff, just hope that he's okay and and hope it's not as serious and that he'll be back, sooner rather than later, and it's not something that will affect his obviously health, in his post-football career. Same for JOK, obviously hoping for some good news regarding the really scary looking injury that he suffered. Hopefully it was just, a really nasty stinger and they just wanted to take as much precaution as possible. So hoping for good news there. Ollie from the future here with a quick update on JOK. He has recently just tweeted that all is well. So great news to see. Obviously that doesn't exactly, inform us too much. But for him to tweet that would suggest that it's probably on the good side. So great to see. Hoping for a speedy recovery for JOK. A great player and even better human being. I thought Mahmoud Diabate was also excellent in this game. He made a few mistakes. He had a face mask call. He did overshoot some of his gaps, but he bounced back really well. And I think he had a great game. He even got a sack on the very next play, actually, after the face mask call. That Browns linebacker room is looking pretty thin. So it would be great if someone like Diabate, an undrafted free agent, could take that leap forward. So I'm excited to see his progression going forward. I was also surprised to see Mike Hall used as much as he has been since coming back. I've seen some really positive stuff in the reps that we have seen from him, which is obviously exciting going forward, given that, he's not even practiced really for the first 6 weeks of his rookie year. And he still is only 20 years old, which is pretty crazy to think. It looks like there's a lot of promise going forward with Mike Hall, and something I'm, similar with Diabate and the other guys, excited to keep an eye on going forward. I said in my key to victory that the Browns had to get pressure on Lamar and somewhat limit Derrick Henry and this Ravens rush attack, if they wouldn't have any chance at all to win this game. And to be honest, I think they did just that. 3 sacks on the day, and this D-line got, consistent pressure on Lamar throughout this game. The Ravens finished this game with 387 total yards of offense, which might sound like a lot, but when you realise that the Ravens were averaging 479 yards of offense in their previous 5 games leading up to this game, you can kind of see how good of a job the Browns defense did do in limiting this Ravens high-powered offense. When you're playing against Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, you're never going to completely shut them down, but it's about doing enough to make it difficult for them. And, I think the Browns defense more than came through in doing that. The Ravens were averaging 228 rushing yards a game in the 5-game win streak leading into this game. And the Browns were able to limit them to just 124 yards rushing. And, other than his 38-yard run, Derrick Henry had 10 carries for 35 yards in this game. So did a pretty good job on Derrick Henry. And, like I said, you're never going to completely shut down this Ravens offense, but the Browns were able to make things difficult for them and, capitalize on most of the chances that they had at getting off the field. The Ravens were 28 for 51 on 3rd downs in their previous 5 games, which is about a 55% conversion rate. And in this game, the Browns held them to 2 for 10 on 3rd down, which is about a 20% conversion rate. And they stopped them on both of their 4th down attempts as well. So really encouraging stuff out of the Browns defense. The Browns defense not only limited this Ravens high-powered offense, but they also got pressure on Lamar, and they were able to get off the field, most chances where they had that chance. They were helped by, obviously having a functioning offense on the other side of the ball this week, but the defense continued to prove why they have been, the least of the Browns' concerns this year. As I said in my Bengals review last week, I think this defense is one of the few things that I'm actually certain about moving forward within this team. This coordinator and the core players on the defensive side, I do believe can work going forward. There's some great young talent on this defense, and I truly believe the sky is the limit for how good this defense can be over the next few years, under this current scheme. The Browns team that showed up for the previous 7 weeks of the season, probably would have somehow found a way to lose this game. I've said every week now that, the Browns need to stop beating themselves. And although we did see some of the existing issues still, we had 7 penalties for 74 yards in this game, still a couple of those alignment penalties. But I do think this was the first game where the Browns played, complementary football across all 3 phases and were able to come through in the moments when they needed to, something they haven't been able to do this year. And, I've made it clear that I don't believe this team should tank. but should instead at least try to gain back some respect as they look to kind of build a winning and somewhat competitive culture moving forward. And I think they took a great first step in yesterday's win against the Ravens. We finally have some good vibes in Cleveland this week for the first time in what feels like forever. This team still is 2-6, and of course, you know, one win doesn't fix a season. There's still a lot to look at and plenty of things to address. And, you know, it is slightly bittersweet knowing that the Browns, you know, would probably be in a better situation right now record-wise if they had made the change at quarterback earlier. But a win over a division rival is always great. So before I start kind of thinking about how the Browns can get to 3-6 and kind of look ahead to the Chargers game next week, you know, I'm going to enjoy this victory Monday, and I might even let it spill over into a victory Tuesday as well. We'll have to wait and see. But that will do it for me today, guys. Thank you for watching. And if you do enjoy my content, then please drop this video a like, hit the subscribe button down below. It's free and it really helps out my channel. You can also check the links in the description to see where you can follow and interact with me on social media. As I always say, I'm trying to build a community of Browns fans, and even if I only get to talk to one Browns fan a day, I'm happy because I'm talking Browns football with the best fan base in the world. Thanks again, guys. Happy Victory Monday, and as always, go Browns.